friends. Welcome to the Rooted Home. I don't have an actual text that I want to preach from today, but I do want to encourage those of you that are watching who are single in this holiday season. Let's be real. Being single is not easy. Being single will have moments where it's cool and it's fun and you get to enjoy the fact that you have all this freedom. But then there are a lot of moments where it's very discouraging because you're coming home to an empty house, you're coming home to an empty bed, and we all long for companionship. We have been created for companionship. We've been created we're relational beings. Like that's the way that God has created us. And so when there's a deficit in that area, like, yeah, we're gonna feel the repercussions of that. And so in this season, I know that there are some of you that are watching who are single, and maybe it's your first Christmas without your fiance. Maybe you had to break up an engagement. Maybe it's your first, holiday season. You broke up with that, person that you've been dating for years. For some of you that may be watching, maybe you're going through a divorce that you never saw coming. And then for some of you, it's just another year where God hasn't answered that prayer. And it's supposed to be a time where we celebrate, right? Where we celebrate the joy of the season. But if you're honest, this season feels nothing like celebration, but more like a mourning, right? And I say that because I remember what that felt like for me when I was single. I didn't get married till I was 26. I was the last person to get married in my family. I thought I would be the first, but the Lord had different plans. I was the last person to get married, and I waited for my husband. And when I say I waited for my husband, it wasn't just waiting for a godly man. I waited to have sex until I was married. So I waited on the Lord until that time, and I can honestly say that it was not easy. There were many moments in that waiting season where I thought, Lord, if you don't do this in like the next month, I'm done. Like I am done. Because you should have done this for me a long time ago. You did it for so and so. And I've been following, and like I just started giving God like a list of why I was qualified to receive the blessing of marriage. And yeah, it's just not a good place when you think that you're in a position where you deserve a blessing more than somebody else, because that's pride. It's pride. And so um I remember that season though. There were so many times where I was like, God, why? Like, why am I single again? And then like during the holidays, you have those family members that are like, where's your boyfriend? When are you going to get married? You're being too picky. And they always have something to say. And thankfully I had, my family was pretty cool. But the truth is that there are family members that like just feel like they always have to say what they think, that they always think that they know what's up, or even like people in church that try to be encouraging, but you're just like, you're not encouraging. Shut up. Be quiet. Stop. Just cut it off. Don't try to encourage me because you're not encouraging me. um, but it's hard, right? Like waiting on the Lord is hard. Waiting in general on anything on the Lord, like it's hard. And it's hard because we're human beings that are trapped in this body, and we're trapped in time. And so like we have these expectations that God's going to do something within our time frame, and because God doesn't work like the same way that we work, he works outside of time. When those needs and those prayers are not answered at the time that we thought they should have been answered, it's hard. And we start to experience being angry. We experience anger, frustration, even the temptation to rebel against God. We experience depression, just all of these things when we don't get what we want when we want it. And that's a very real thing. And it's nothing to be ashamed of, because God knows this. Like, we are emotional human beings. We are flesh, and our flesh wants what it wants. So this is nothing to be ashamed of. But it is something that you have to be cautious over, because the enemy will come during the season, and he will find every way that he can to discourage you, and he'll find every way that he can to get you to take that shortcut. He'll find every way that he can to to tempt you to rebel against God. And maybe rebellion won't look like you turning your back away from God completely. It doesn't mean that you'll leave the faith, but rebellion is done. I mean, you can rebel against God in the most smallest things. Perfect example. I remember there were so many. I've done conferences for youth, just over the years. And I remember doing a lot of conferences for single youth. And, they start off with like, I'm going to wait on the Lord. Like, I'm not going to date anybody that's not a believer. I'm going to truly wait on a godly man. But then when the years start to go by and God hasn't sent them somebody, they're like, well, maybe I'll marry somebody that, I mean, they're not really a believer. They're not plugged into a local church, but they believe in God. They pray for their meals. And so those things that they used to stand for, slowly they start to compromise, right? And so rebellion doesn't look like you turning your back against God completely. Sometimes rebellion looks like those little compromises, one little compromise at a time. And so where you started off strong, that I'm going to wait on God, I'm going to wait on a godly man, now you're compromising because you're desperate, and now you're tempted to date that person that has no relationship with God. They're a theist. They believe in God, but they have no relationship with God, right? Or maybe you were that person that was like, I'm not going to have sex outside of marriage. I'm going to wait on the Lord and, believe that, that the Lord will give me the strength to wait until, my marriage day. But then you find that person that you want to keep. And so you give yourself over to them intimately. And so it's those little compromises that happen that are in some ways an act of rebellion. But I want to say this, like, anytime somebody rebels against God, it wasn't like an overnight thing. There was always a progression of things that led to that. And so this is why I want to talk to those of you that are single, because it's in these moments where it's difficult, where the enemy will find every way to tempt you to compromise little by little. And so the things that you held on to dearly, the enemy wants you to compromise them, because when you compromise those things that God wants for you, you'll always get the short end of the stick. If the enemy can find a way to make you compromise, he knows he's found a way to get you to receive like just a tiny portion of all that God had for you. And I don't want you to be that. I don't want you to be that person who compromises out of a season of desperation. And then you look back and you think, oh crap, I could have waited. I could have done this better. And I didn't, because I got desperate. But this is a time where the enemy likes to come in and work as much as he can to cause people to stumble and to compromise and to take the shortcut and to do all of the things that will enslave them instead of bringing them freedom. And, I look at my life with my husband, and we're going on 5 years of marriage, which it doesn't make me an expert at all. But as somebody who did wait on the Lord, I look at what I have with my husband, and I often think about how different life would have looked like for me if I would have joined myself to some of the men that I dated who I thought were God's choice for me. Like, my life would have looked so different if I had decided in those moments that that's who I needed to bind myself to. And I'm so thankful that God had to wreck my plans. And I'm so thankful that God put it in them to break up with me, because that was God's protection over me. That was God saying, like, nah, you are not ending up with that. Like, I don't care what I have to do. I don't care if I have to break your heart into pieces, but I'm going to make sure that you get the blessing that I have for you. And so this season that looks like an empty season of an unanswered prayer, can I just say that on the other side of that, this is also God's protection? Like, you don't know what God is protecting you from. Sure, in the natural, here's another year where you don't have that person, where you're still waiting on the Lord. But in the supernatural, God is looking at things and he's like, I see the beginning, the end from the beginning, and I know that I have to do things this way to protect you. So I want to encourage you to look at this season as a season of protection, because there are things that you can't see that God has already seen for you, and he's already made provision. And even though it doesn't feel that way, don't underestimate God's kindness and how he works when you can't see it. And then number two, understanding that marriage isn't the answer. Like the depression you're feeling, the anger you're feeling, the envy, those feelings that you're feeling right now that you think will be, that they'll be consumed and fulfilled the moment you get married. I hate to break it to you, but those things will still be there. They will pop out in other ways through different scenarios, but they'll make their way. They'll try to make their way back into your life because we're human. Like our the true satisfaction of life, the true satisfaction and joy and fulfillment that we desire and we long for, it's not found in a person, it's found in the Lord. And like, this is a thing. I meet so many people who, gosh, I meet so many people who think that marriage, like, especially in like the young adults, like anywhere from like 19 to like 23, like there's this thing in that season, like this mindset that if only I can get married, I'll arrive and all of these feelings will go away. No, like when you get married, you're still gonna have issues. When you get married, you're still flesh, so you're still gonna feel all of these things. And not only that, like marriage is not easy. Marriage is not easy. I can tell you that in the last 5 years that I've been with my husband, I love him with all my heart, and I'm so thankful for him. Like he is my hero. I admire that man so much. But there have been times where I have sat in my bed and I'm like, was I better? I think I would have been better single. Like it would have been different because when you're single, you just worry about yourself. But when you get married and God starts to use that other person to expose the things that have to die inside of you, man, that's hard. And that's where the issues start to happen, right? Because our flesh doesn't want to die, but marriage, like when you come into union with somebody, you're starting a journey of death to self, man. Like that's what it is. And so if you think that marriage is going to solve your problems, if you don't have a solid foundation with the Lord, if you don't have a strong relationship with the Lord where you know him and he knows you and you two are tight, marriage is going to be hard. And it's already hard by nature, but it's going to be even harder if you do not know how to cling unto the Lord. And learning how to cling unto the Lord and learning how to be one with the Lord starts right now. It doesn't start when you get married, it starts right now. As you build this relationship with the Lord, then like what you build with God, you will take it into your marriage. So for those of you that are idolizing marriage to this place where like you want it so bad because you think it will solve your problems, it will not solve your problems. As a matter of fact, it will be the start of many other problems um, in life, because God's going to use it as a way to sanctify you. But you want to make sure that you enter that sanctification journey with the person that God has for you, because you're going to need somebody full of the Holy Spirit to believe the best about you when you're not being the best, and vice versa. Like that man that, because here's the thing, women always want, especially Christian women, they always want a godly man, they always want a man with all of these qualities. But listen, you got to be a woman too that's worthy of being trapped. I don't know why I said that, but it's the only thing I can think of. Like you got to be a woman that's worthy of you know of marrying. Like God also cares about his son. So like if you want God to give you the best, then you got to make yourself something worth fighting for, something worth pursuing, something worth joining um joining to. And so yeah, like you know the marriage is a partnership where you want to do it with the person that God has for you. And you don't want to enter the journey of sanctification without the Spirit. Like you will fail like this. And so I want to encourage you that like this season of you being single, there's so much more that God is doing that you may not see, but he's doing it for your good. There is glory in the suffering. There really is glory in the mourning. And yeah, I want to go back real quick to that part of sanctification. Like when you're going through the journey of sanctification in marriage, like you really want to be with somebody that can believe the best about you when you're not the best, but you also want to be the person that believes the best about your spouse when they're not being the best. And you need the Spirit to do that. And those things come with having a close relationship with the Lord. And so again, I want to encourage you that just because you're single in this season and it feels like God is withholding from you, God is not withholding from you. God is protecting you. God is doing something so much greater and bigger than you can ever see. And so as we approach this season, my prayer for you is that the Lord would, that you would invite the Lord in your pain, that you would invite him into your disappointment, invite him into the frustration, but also allow him to speak life to you and allow him to speak truth to you, because at the end of the day, it's the truth of God that sets us free. It's his word and his presence that really fills every part of our being. And so I just pray over you and just pray that the Lord would fill you up with this presence, and that the Lord would take the grief, the sadness, the disappointment, the hurt, the frustration, and that there would be an exchange of peace and joy and satisfaction and laughter, that you would laugh this season and that you would rejoice in this season, knowing that those who hope in the Lord, that if you hope in the Lord, you will not be put to shame, and that he who began a good work in you will see it. We'll see that he who began a good work in you will complete it, and that he desires to give you good things. He desires nothing but good for you, and that you would truly find the freedom in knowing that he longs to give to you. And that as you are waiting, he is giving to you. He may not be giving to you the way that you want him to give to you, but he's giving to you. He is giving you his kindness. He's giving you his presence. He's giving you his peace. He's giving you his blessing. So may you be encouraged this holiday season. Love you all, and thanks for sticking with me.